Yeah, welcome everyone. I hope you can hear me. If not, I think then Stefan will give me a strong sign to let me know. Welcome everyone to the second edition of our talk series on the current perspectives on the protests in Belarus. In today's edition, we will have a look on two perspectives from academia on the current situation. And on behalf of the organizers, I would like to welcome very warmly our today's speakers, Tsimafei Malakouski and Pavel Barkouski. And before we start with the presentation of the today's speakers, I would like to say a few words on how this session tonight will be organized. And so first of all, we are going to hear Tsimafei's and Pavel's statements, and later on we will have time until 6 p.m. sharp for questions and discussions. So if you have already questions, then please during the statements, please post them already in the chat, and then we can later in the question session address them to the speakers. And if you want to make a statement, then since I would say we have 25 participants, we are quite a group with a good overview. So if you want to do a direct statement, then enter a hashtag, and we'll hopefully to see it and call you in. And today's session is recorded. So that means if you have your cameras off, you probably won't be recorded. And if you have your cameras on and if you're saying something, then you will be recorded. And so now ideally I would be able to, share the slides. So who we are, just very quick, if you are not the first time here, we are the Leipzig regional group who organized this. We're from the Junge GWZO. The Junge GWZO is an initiative of early career research up to 35, with the research focus on Eastern and Southeastern Europe. And if you want to join, if you are working from Leipzig or in the Saxony area, you can join us, and you can find here our email address, or you can get in touch with us via Twitter on the Junge GWZO. And we have a program plan that is usually our talks are on Monday from 5 to 6 Central European time, and our next talks are on January 11th. This will be on perspectives from literary studies, and our talk on February the 8th of February will be on perspectives from the LGBTQ movements. So with this now, having said this, I would like to, if I can, I think I will close the slides. I will stop sharing the screen. Great, perfect. And we can come to our first speakers. I would like to introduce you Tsimafei Malakouski studied political science at the European Humanities University in Vilnius and is currently in Warsaw based. And Tsimafei coordinates the Honest University project, among others. And this is a sub-project of the Honest People initiative that we will learn more in his presentation about. And the Honest University project unites activists from Belarusian universities who organize the protests. And we are very glad, Tsimafei, to have you here. And the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Anja. Hope you can hear me. Would like to introduce shortly myself and maybe tell more about my background. I used to study in Belarusian universities, in Belarusian University of Informatics and Radio Electronics. But I quit the university partly due to political reasons and partly due to a change of my academic interest. And right now I study political science in my final year of bachelor degree. And my focus is the actual elections and unfair elections in non-democratic states. Yeah, this year was very special for me personally, and definitely is very unique for my country. You know that before the elections, the very big focus of political agenda was on how our government, Belarusian government, and President Lukashenko himself is dealing with problem of COVID, what are the restrictions measures in Belarus, and how the health service is functioning, and how the doctors are protected. And this is a very big topic, and a lot of, you know, this usually when experts or journalists talking about the prerequisites for this election, they talk about the self-organization of Belarusian civil society and how they actually managed to deal, not the government, but the civil society managed to deal with this challenge for our country. Before the elections, when some very special candidates declared their willingness to run for the elections, we all realized that it's going to be very special. You know that President Lukashenko was winning, at least according to official results, was winning the previous elections for 5 times. But this year we knew that these candidates would be challenging President Lukashenko, and they came up with a very special statements which somehow united so-called creative class. That's how we usually explain this creative class: programmers, designers, I don't know, PR managers, and a lot of people who used to be very much apolitical and didn't participate much. But this year they decided to be the part of the movement and help these alternative candidates, pro-democratic candidates, to win these past elections. And yeah, from the beginning of the campaign, there was a very interesting statement of one of the candidates, Mr. Babarika, who was quoting actually Joseph Stalin, who said that it's not that important how people vote. It's much more important how the commission is counting the ballots. And with this leitmotif, interesting initiative was launched. The initiative was called Honest People. That's the initiative I'm right now volunteering for and working for, whose main goal was to make these elections anyhow transparent, free and fair. And we started with this back in June. We started with this big campaign of civic education and using the instruments of digital democracy. We made electoral code easy to read for Belarusians, and we created the platform where everyone could apply for local election commissions. We created the web page. People can just fill in and get all of them templates for applications for the local election commissions, and more than 2,000 people applied, and none of them were elected to these local election commissions, and in order to count the votes. And that was also the big deal for Belarusians, who realize that actually, yeah, that's where the unfairity of the elections is starting, when we cannot be the part of the election process. Yeah, and after this initiative, Honest People launched another projects, Observers, Alternative Vote Count, and then, like, that's where I joined this initiative as a volunteer. We were working on the alternative ways of counting the votes. We created this campaign of white bands where we were able to count so-called like alternative voters who support alternative candidates. We could count them, if not by ballots, but at least by white bands they were wearing at the electoral polls. And also the big project Golos, what is a voice or vote in English, was launched as also the part of this initiative, first of all, where we created the opportunity of alternative count, where people who voted could have submit electronically via Telegram or Viber, like via messengers. They could have submit their ballots and the actual candidate who they voted for. So this was all the prerequisites for before the elections, the big campaign of honest people, and you know what happened afterwards, how the election were frauded, and Lukashenko again received his super high numbers at the results. Of course, the big repression towards everyone who were trying hard to make these elections free and fair started. The heads of initiative of honest people were arrested, were detained, and they are still in KGB as the suspects for crimes of organizing mass demonstrations. And the rest of the team had to had to leave the country, and currently in Poland. And together with them, we are working right now on the different ways of supporting Belarusian civil society, which is in the very first stage of its development, would say so, but still with the very big steps. It's going to actually have the voice and be heard by if not by the government, but at least by the whole, to be heard worldwide. In September, with the start of the academic year, students, of course, joined the whole protest movement. 1st September, the Day of Knowledge in Belarus officially, and the start of the academic year, more than 2,000 students marched on the main streets of Minsk. I was one of them. We were marching, and of course, as other protesters, we were running away from the riot police over there, and this kind of mechanic of expressing their votes was not very different from what other social groups are doing in Belarus, how they protest. But still, students started to self-organize in their universities. They started to create some small groups of activists, started to create petitions and demand the rector of the university to support protesters. We at the initiative Honest People, we of course were supporting these actions. We were helping them with our news channels. We were sending newsletters and posting the photos from the protest, but we realized that actually the problem of lack of civic education for students is in place. We realized that students are actually demanding rector to recount the votes, for example, which is actually, which is of course not the what is not in the competence of rector. We realized that we as initiative Honest People, with our expertise, with our experience of dealing with governmental institutions, we have to support them and share our expertise, help them judicially, help them with our I don't know, digital and electronic democracy tools. And we launched this project, which is called Honest University, with the idea to unite activists from different universities and to provide all of them judicial help, to provide them with our expertise. Since the beginning of September, in this Telegram chat with the activists, where we had from 2 to 3 representatives from every university, which is somehow protesting in Belarus. Right now, it's 17. There are 17 universities that are protesting. We were able to coordinate our activities. We were able to plan the future demonstrations, actions. We were able to prepare petitions and so on and so forth. And the movement was with a very positive dynamic. It was growing up. Local chats, like Protestant chats, Telegram chats in the universities were growing as well. In the medical university and in Belarusian State University of Informatics and Radioelectronics, up to 6,000 participants of the chats who are very active or who are less active but still supportive towards the movement. They were discussing the actions and the planning demonstrations locally, and on the level of Honest University, on this platform where we are together with the students, with the student representatives and student activists, we were planning globally, I would say nationally, the actions and demonstrations overall. And the main modus until the end of October was to make rector and the university administration hear protesters and become the part of the actual academic community. Because rectors in Belarus are appointed by the government, by President Lukashenko, and they of course were not the representatives of the academic community from the university, but they were more like representatives of the current Belarusian regime, who were transmitting the position of the government. And they were, of course, involved in the crackdown of the demonstrations locally in the university. But we were doing good and looking for new forms of the protests. We were preparing petitions, first of all. We were, of course, making demonstrations. We were the most famous demonstration in the beginning of October was the sit-in mechanic of activism, which unite all of 18 protesting universities all over Belarus, where they, at the same time students just went to the letters of the university campus. They were sitting in and protesting, protesting against the regime and supporting the overall protest movement demands. It's free elections and the justice for everyone who were involved in the tortures and the crackdown on the August demonstrations and new elections in Belarus. With this modus, we were preparing to another big milestone and event in the Belarusian protest movement. In the end of October, the national leader of Belarus, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, who was, according to the independent polls, who were, if not the winner of the elections, at least the leader, according to the polls, independent polls, national leader of Belarus declared a national ultimatum. And she said that the demands of the protest should be fulfilled. Otherwise, the national strike would take place. Until after 26th of October, we, the students, together with the faculty members, with the academics, we supported this national ultimatum and joined the national strike. That was probably the biggest event for Belarusian academic protest, where at least in 5 universities, some of the faculty members and students stopped attending the classes and teaching at the universities and joined this national demonstration, national strike. And instead of the lectures, they were protesting in front of the academia or in front of the campus or inside the university. The event was big. A lot of people supported this, and we were very, the students and faculty members, we were very loud publicly inside Belarus and outside Belarus. A lot of media worldwide were writing about this protest. And naturally, administration responded with a huge wave of repression towards students and faculty members. And after this, we know about the, like in the week after, during the 1 week after the ex-president Lukashenko declared that every protesting student should be expelled. Right now, we know about 146 expelled students due to political reason, due to their civic engagement and activism. We know about more than 12 facts of when the faculty members got fired due to their support of national strike and due to their position as well. Yeah, and also on Tuesday, afterwards, after the national ultimatum, the so-called Black Thursday happened when 12 students got detained by KGB. So they were not simply detained as the participants of demonstration, but they became political prisoners. They were arrested and put in the prison in KGB prison in Belarus as organizers, or the people who are responsible for moving the protest inside the academia. Of course, it affected a lot the whole protest, and after this, a lot of students, a lot of people the administrators of the Telegram chats and the leaders of the protest, they had to leave the country. Currently, we know about the 36 students who are in Kyiv currently right now, and they are former leaders. They are actually the members of our Telegram chats of Honest University platform. We know about a lot of students who had to leave the country because they got expelled, and they were threatened with being to be recruited in Belarusian army. It's also a very interesting thing and a very interesting threat from the point of Belarusian regime. Yeah, and after this, we, as the Honest University initiative, besides this support of activism direction, we opened the helping center for students and faculty members. We aggregated all of them initiatives who are the foundations, just people in Belarus or abroad. We aggregated all of the help that can be provided for the students. We created this hotline in Telegram, where we reviewing the applications of the students and faculty members who got repressed and suffered from these threats or got fired, got expelled, and we are helping them, providing them judicial help, providing them financial compensations if they have to, for example, if they lost the chance to stay in the student dormitory, for example, after they got expelled, or they lost their scholarship, their only income they had. And also the big point over here is the academic opportunities, because in Belarus, and I know it myself as a former Belarusian student, the fact that someone loses his or her opportunity to study, to receive higher education, it's of course the big tragedy for only for student him or herself, but also for the whole family. And we, of course, as at the Honest University initiatives, as one who partly responsible for these repressions as well, we started to look actively together with the political powers, together with the Belarusians abroad. We started to look for all of them universities who can support somehow Belarusian students and Belarusian faculty members and let them continue their studies abroad. Yeah, and like right now I'm summing up. Currently, after this Black Thursday and after this big wave of repression, the protest of students and faculty members got down, would say, also due to coronavirus. And for us, even for our government, for our current regime, it's not just some myth and psychos, as Lukashenko called it once. And distance learning is also in place in Belarus, and students are not physically do not attend lectures and do not go to the university. And right now we're in, would say, in the protest depression. we continued our actions and our demonstrations virtually. We work on all of them bureaucracy. We are still right now, we are working on the projects of calling on Bologna protests, European higher education area, calling on partners, the foreign partners of Belarusian University to stop partnership with the with the universities who were pressing towards academia, who were failing breaking the academic freedoms. And we would say the main modus right now is to prepare to get ready for the long marathon to spring. We are right now still to try to reestablish or to give some new life toward the protest inside the academia, to find the new people inside who are ready to lead the protest inside the academia, and to continue again to be loud and to get the regime hear us as a very important social group of Belarusian protests. I'm finishing with this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tsimafei, for your very clear and impressive statement and insights on how the student protests developed. And now I would like to give the word to Pavel Barkouski, who specializes in social philosophy and in the history of philosophy, and had recently, I think already finished a couple of days ago, a fellowship at the famous IVM in Vienna. And Pavel, you were DAAD research fellow as well. In your publishings, you deal with post-ideologies, post-politics, and you have conducted research in the field of postmodernism theories. A critical reading of Gardama is what I saw in your publication list as well. And you have been a lecturer at the Institute of Cultural Philosophy at the Belarusian State University. And there you started to organize the protests among staff and students. And yeah, you were then forced to stop your work and due to your activities. And now I'm happy to give the word to you to listen to your statement. And just a short reminder to all, please mute your microphones if you have not. And if you want, you can already start to enter questions into the chat. Pavel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Annie. First of all, I should say that I was a lecturer and associated professor of the Belarusian State University, one of the leading universities of Belarus. And from the August, I was in a different status. I was a leader of strike committee at the philosophical faculty. I was a lecturer who was fired from the university for my political opinions. It was partly my decision, but it was also some oppression from the university administration. And I have many communication with administration, with students, with other high school teachers. My report today is about my opinions, is about my reflections, why our protest movement is not so widely supported by academical community in Belarus. My colleague Tsimafei have reported you a short history of our university protests, about some repressions that our activists had. But this is only the part of a situation. It's a situation from the eyes of active students and lecturers who want to support some strike movement in Belarus, some political changes. But the great part of our body of university community is very passive now and before. And I want to discuss about the situation. First of all, I should admit that the level of involvement in protest activities of university teachers and some members of scientific institutes is very diverse now from the start. If in August or September there are academicians who spoke out against violence, for free elections, open letters, recorded video messages, appeared in the media and on personal blogs. But then, since October, this movement began to fade. High school lectures take a rather passive position in relation to the protest movement. Them in public or in the workplace. Number of public actions on the part of academics has now also decreased due to the exhaustion, collected letters against violence or messages. Basically, all the positions are declared. There is no point to repeat them often, and it is difficult to find an original form. The many academics are not ready to start a strike or have more active protest in the university. And the question remains about the reasons for this insignificant motivation of the communities to defend the basic values of freedom, human rights, academic autonomy, etc., what the members of university are obliged to support. Moreover, this is observed both on the part of high school teachers and students, despite the fact that the latter have the natural potential of resistance to the regime clearly higher. Therefore, the subsequent reflections are an attempt to understand the foundation of this disastrous state of the scientific and university communities in Belarus today. So, high school teachers and researchers today are afraid to openly express their civil and political views. They are frightened of any form of solidarity, contrary to the policy of the administration. The administration is putting pressure on dissenting people, forcing them to shut up. Also, it is afraid to some extent of losing its reputation in the international area. Therefore, teachers are still capable of private expression of their views in a narrow cycle of colleagues or their students, but they are afraid of publicity. This is a symptom of the degradation of universities in Belarus as a whole, since they are consistently reduced to the status of institution providing educational services. A long period of persecution of education, especially in humanities and liberal arts sphere, a low standard of quality, and the pursuit of quantitative knowledge management, the absence of a clear university policy, a rather low social status and conditions of remuneration for high school teachers lead to the fact that the majority of university members are in difficult emotional and psychological state. As employees themselves, especially in the sphere of social sciences and humanities, have been in a kind of isolation from academic life in a global perspective for a very long time. Many of them do not speak foreign languages. They are published mainly in Russian language issues. Their scientific works often do not undergo proper expert evaluation and only simulate scientific activity. This affects the lack of international status and guarantees of maintaining a place in higher education on the basis of recognition of their merits. Any form of academic life that goes beyond the curriculum, as a rule, is suppressed or tightly regulated, which leads to the degradation of some life in faculties. The students certainly feel the civic pathos more sharply and are most determined, but the general atmosphere also constrains their activity. Nevertheless, this drastic situation, even more than 400 employees, students, and graduates of the Faculty of Philosophy, for example, signed an open letter of solidarity with the victims of peaceful actions and in defense of academic freedom in September. Belarusian university have firmly established a policy of fighting for international rankings purely on formal grounds. For example, filling out university websites, the presence of publication activity mainly regional, a set of materials posted on the internet regardless of their quality. So education quality management as the main form of control of academic life at universities in Belarus also focuses on formal and quantitative indicators of teachers' performance. They doesn't encourage them to have some additional academic activities outside of auditorium, makes them overestimate students' knowledge for the sake of better ranking results. That is, in general, creates a feeling of some formal and not necessarily high-quality implementation of the duties of academics. The possibility of easily replacement one specialist with another without a general influence on the system. The very value of education, its filling and obtaining are reduced in Belarus to the only formal indicators of the presence of a diploma and a set of specialist skills without their mandatory use in a future professional career. But since the formal requirement of having a university degree itself is necessary for a career in most organizations in Belarus, for many students, it's a necessary investment as just a ticket to future promotion opportunities. This circumstance forces students not to pay serious attention to the quality of their education, but makes them dependent on receiving it as such a possibility for career. As a result, we are dealing with a rather sad state of the academic community in Belarus. It has degraded professionally, serious international weight, stable international relations and projects. Does not receive confirmation of the demand for its professional qualities, and is focused solely on fulfilling formal indicators of work and study. All this creates an atmosphere of dependence of workers and students on the system of organization of educational and scientific processes that has developed in universities and research institutes. It makes it difficult to abandon the requirements of the system, taking into account the possibility of losing all previously undertaken efforts to obtain an education or build their own academic career. Specialists in the field rarely feel that they are in demand in the labor market in qualities other than only teaching. And therefore, they are not ready to actively oppose the authorities as their main employer. Students, on the other hand, are not ready to lose their previous investments in education and go to study at foreign universities if they want to continue their working career within the country. Diplomas and scientific degrees obtained abroad can be hardly converted in Belarusian equivalents, and that is a problem for the students too. So, as you can see, that is a very drastic situation with the current state of academic freedom and some personal qualities of our university communities that prevent them from the engagement in active protest movement. And now I can say some words about some possibilities, as I can imagine it, some possibilities to international interference in the situation, some international support of Belarusian university community. So, as we know, and Tsimafei said about this, our universities in Belarus have many concluded international cooperation agreements with some European universities, research institute, and so on. They interact under the Erasmus programs and such as a program of international exchanges, of international grant programs, and they try to integrate into the Bologna system, but without any visible efforts. So the impact will be achieved if statements from our foreign partners and academic organizations are made in defense of academic rights and freedoms in Belarus, and agreements with Belarusian university are questioned if these statements with these requirements are ignored. Then if some contacts will be established on a non-institutional basis. I mean, it will be some invitations to internships, support programs, and so on that are committed directly to some concrete specialist in field or some postgraduate student without interaction with the administration. Maybe international community, international academic communities can expand the opportunities for postgraduate education of Belarusian students, and they have so this some additional opportunities to have some alternative career. Of course, this may be other steps, other measures, and we can discuss this in usual dialogue between international communities and Belarusian one, embodied by independent representatives, not official body. And as I think, the situation is that We have some percentage of active student and high school teachers who involved in protests, who fight for their freedom, academic freedom, for the freedom of our country. But we have a great part of this passive majority, passive community of academia. And now we need to not only support the active protesters, not only support these people who are oppressed by the powers. We need to have some measures, some instruments to influence this passive majority. Because of without their support, without their involvement in this movement, we have no some visible results. Because when you have only some people who actively protest, we have some repressive measures that are very effective. But when we involve the great part of academic community, then we have the situation where these operations are not so fruitful, are not so effective, as I think now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Pavel, for this very drastic picture that you draw, and for this I would say, like, not contrary, but kind of completing perspective on the aspect that Tsimafei stressed in his statement. And we have 10 minutes left for questions. So the audience, you have to be quick to enter your questions. And meanwhile, I would like to pose the first question to you. So the first question, you already started, Pavel, to give some ideas on how the international community could support with, you called it, with like individual contracts or possibilities. I see here, like, we have in the audience people who are engaged on all levels of the University of Leipzig, and this is why I would like to give Tsimafei as well the possibility, or you, if you want to elaborate on this as well, of course, to tell us what, from your perspective, are the best things that the international community could do to either support your work as an activist, or to support scholars or students, since Tsimafei as well mentioned a certain protest depression. So what would be your request to the international community?
Thank you. Would not call it a request, but overall, I agree with Pavel. That's very much true that this foreign international pressure on the university administration with like suspending the contracts or these agreements of partnership with Belarusian universities who are really oppressive towards its academic community. This is very crucial right now and important, and right now this is what is in the protest agenda, at least inside the universities. But also, like as I mentioned, this depression, and Pavel also supported me, that there is a decline actually in the academia protest. I would say that this symbolic support, this is also something that is in need for Belarusian students and Belarusian faculty members. And that's the good practice that is in place between the social groups in Belarus, when, for example, when students were addressing the workers of the factories in Belarus in their strike, and they were like recording the videos and standing with the banners that they are like supportive towards them, and they want them keep going, and they express in every the the best words toward them. I would say that that might be very helpful to cheer up the Belarusian students and Belarusian faculty members when the international academic community, or at least some particular universities, for example, Leipzig University, can record a video or make an action with the, I don't know, yeah, right now during Corona, it's maybe not the best, but at some form address Belarusian students and support in their very difficult fight and very dangerous fight. I'm pretty sure that that might be very helpful toward them as well. And yes, Anja, you mentioned this, you were referring to the words about this Vilnius University project and this helping center. And right now I would share in the chat the web page. It's in Russian right now, but you can at least see the catalog via. Actually, GWZO is one of the partner, and it's like we also mentioning them among partners for Belarusian students and Belarusian faculty members. And over there, we of course fulfilling. We are trying to expand the number of the programs and the opportunities that the Belarusian students have. Of course, there is a big problem for people who study medicine, for example. And if they got expelled in Belarusian university, it's not so easy to change, to find something where they can continue their studies abroad. And of course, for this passive group of people, it might be the very crucial argument over here. If there are no ways to continue their studies, if they would get expelled, it restrict and limit their willingness and their bravity towards participating in the movement. Yeah, and over here it's important that we do not, as a project, we are always mentioning this, that we do not to have this brainwash of our country when we when the best students and the most active students and the talented students are leaving their countries, but we are here only dealing with the consequences, where we are providing the opportunities for them who, unfortunately, due to repressive regime, lost their chances to study. So I would say that the new opportunities and the diverse opportunities to different academic fields is also something that is in need right now. That's it.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for this, Pavel. Do you want to react on this, or add something?
Mm-hmm. I support the ideas of Tsimafei, and my note is that, of course, it's a great part of support for students or faculty members who was rejected or fired from the universities. They do not have a feeling, they should not have a feeling of some loneliness in this situation, of some absence of support. But of course, we should have not only this form of support. As I think, the activization of some informal international contacts with Belarusian academicians and students in regular basis could be some crucial point to open some other perspective for these people. They could see another possibilities, another level of contacts, not only with Russian or post-Soviet academical communities, but also with European ones. And maybe such programs of, I don't know, what is it, online conferences or online scholarships with intensive communication and some forms of interaction in this situation of it's hard to have another physical meetings. So I think that these events, academic events, maybe is the next chance to this passive majority to see another perspective of this academic life, not only the life under oppression and under a form of not very good education and not very thinking about this. I don't know exactly, but in my view, this form of support of some closest international academic contacts, but not through the administration, but through the, some grassroots initiation, maybe the influential factor to activate some students and faculty members in Belarus through these activities in short and in a long perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for this. So we have now we are coming to an end to approach this, and after we will have closed the talk, we will blend in a slide with some links where you can where we have listed from the Junge GWZO some links how to support with fundraising or with like on Twitter. And so before we end, I would like to ask you to answer very quickly the last question that we have that goes a bit into this direction. You mentioned this like grassroots initiatives, and in Tsimafei's statement, you already mentioned as well that you were in the beginning, you addressed directors of the universities, but now the focus of the people to whom you're actually directing your actions shifted. Could you maybe just react quickly on this question, if you actually, with your actions, are trying to address the university directors, or how did this change?
Yeah, that's true that shift took place. We, as main models, we had a lot of hope in the beginning of the academic protest. We had a lot of hope that rectors would support students and academia. And I would say it happened at certain extent at some universities. But as a matter of this non-democratic vertical, these rectors got replaced by another more repressive rectors. It happened, for example, in Belarusian State University of Culture. Yeah, the thing is right now, after students realized that that's the rectors who are calling riot police for the demonstrations inside the university, they realize that they are not their representatives anymore, and they cannot be even addressed and called for any kind of dialogue inside the academia. And right now, as I feel, and we also support as the Honest University support this idea of rather alternative, like how to say, to be as an alternative, to ignore the non-lawful decisions of or orders of the rectors or of the university administrations, and more following students' own rights or academic community rights to protest, to express, to stand up for their own values and their own demands. So yeah, I would say shift took place, and right now there is rectors are not that important for students and faculty members.
Okay, I could add that you should understand, in Belarus, every rector or dean is not a part of academic body. They are part of president administration, because the Belarusian former president Lukashenko has built a system where all rectors are the man of president, and they have a right to assign dean staff. And of course, in this situation, only personal qualities of some deans or some rectors or vice rectors to have some support to the ideas of non-violence, for example. And with such statements, some rectors are on the beginning of this protest, but now we have a situation where all not truly loyal administrations are changed or very oppressed. And they have no great support in academic staff or in student staff. Mostly they are only officials who are not ready to go against some power decisions. And we have no any hope or any rational arguments to think that these officials are on our part, on part of some protest movement. They are only officials with their loyalty to the power.
Okay, thank you, Pavel. So with this devastating but for sure not accurate words, I would like to thank you very much for giving us an insight and drawing this complex picture of the situation in academia, inside Belarus, outside Belarus. I want to thank you on behalf of all the organizers. Thank you for your time, and yeah, please take our greetings and the support from Leipzig, and yeah, be in touch, and yeah, thank you again. And there's the last question. If you can send follow-up questions to Pavel and Tsimafei, yeah, send us, yeah, Elisa posted the email address, send us the questions and we will forward them, and I'm sure you can contact them. And yeah, so with this, thank you everybody for listening and for joining, and I wish you a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, bye. So, and here are some last email addresses. We have Honest People .by. This is the Instagram channel of Honest People Project that Tsimafei presented, and some other fundraisers. And yeah, we will leave the slides for a couple of more minutes open if you want to click on it. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.